The cloud. Okay, we are recording. We are live. Okay, great. Welcome to Reality Check with Rishi. This is Political Monday, and we are delighted to have a very special guest, a council member from the city of Hawthorne, former council member, former mayor, and a very strong leader and a celebrity from Southern California. And we had a little issues here with Zoom, but we are all set and ready to go. But I think the story is playing out with coronavirus still. And obviously, in this last few days, America has crossed Italy in terms of the total number of mortality.
Yes.
And this is really sad, you know, what we are experiencing. And there are still four states. There are still four states that haven't gone down and done a full lockdown. And essentially, that's the weak link in the chain that we have today, you know, because unless we have all 50 states locked down, this is really not going to work. So when people talk about, and they are saying like, Rishi, till when will this last? And my take is we are looking at least like probably like early to mid-May. And if things are still not in check, we are looking at mid-June, you know. So this is going to be like a long haul. And the sooner we get things in control, the better off we are. And in Santa Clara County, where we are, we have seen a little dip. And it went to a peak, and then we sort of like slowly going downhill. And it seems like it's on the other side of the bell curve, but we don't know yet, because the last message we saw from the county was they were trying to get the PPP devices because they were they thought that they will see a spike. We haven't quite seen a spike yet, but it's better to be prepared. And we were probably one of the early counties in the whole country that enforced a full lockdown with getting our schools to shut down, and we have been very proactive in taking some good measures to see how we can get our arms together with this. Obviously, there's a big hit on the economy. So Angie will talk about coronavirus, we'll talk about the economy, we'll talk about what we can do, because I really respect you as a leader, you know, what you have done in Southern California, and your tips and insights would be very, very valuable for us, and anything that you would like to share. But let's start from a standpoint of where we met for the first time. And I go back to December of 2018, you know, so we had just wrapped up the city council election of November 2018. And this was like a few days prior to December 6th, I think that was the date. And I just read in the paper that, oh, look at this, the tunnel opening is happening, because I was keenly following the Hyperloop situation and Elon Musk's, the tunnel, the boring machine that he was using to build that tunnel in Southern California. And the inauguration had been delayed. And then I saw this, something in the press that, oh, look at this, it's happening next week. So then I started scampering that, how do I get there and how do I get an invitation? And then one of my good friends connected me to Angie. They said, Angie is the celebrity. If there's anybody who can make it happen, it's Angie. She is very well connected. And that's how I got a pass to be at that tunnel opening. And it was great to meet Angie. She's a very warm, friendly, welcoming person. And beyond that, you know, great leadership. And I could just see all the impact that she has done with respect to not only approving this tunnel project below SpaceX, 1.2 miles long, but also all the other good work that she has done in Southern California. So Angie, it's a delight to have you today. Welcome. You know, we haven't met for a long time. It's great to see you over Zoom.
Well, thank you. Let me just first of all say thank you so much for the invitation just to be part of your podcast, but most importantly, to just talk about issues that are impacting us today, right? We did meet in 2018 with Elon Musk, the boring company, digging a tunnel under the city of Hawthorne, where I served the city for 12 years as an elected. SpaceX is stationed here in Hawthorne, just down the street from where I live. And so I believe it was our wonderful friend, council member in the city of Artesia, that introduced us and had an opportunity to bring you in and be one of the first, mind you, in that line before we actually went in. If you remember, Rishi, we were the first ones in line.
Exactly.
And walked around the whole block. We were the first in there, and probably one of the first to actually
take the ride too.
To take the ride and speak to those that were instrumental in developing it, implementing, it took a lot. But yes, thank you. I just want to say thank you again for the opportunity.
You know, Angie, that was such a good trip out there. And when Elon Musk emerged from the tunnel, you know, I had just picked a particular spot. I was standing there, and his car drove out from the tunnel. You know, after he took the ride after many of us had already taken the ride, and that's when he came out, and he ended up shaking hands with a person, and that was me. I was the very first guy to shake his hands. You know,
I saw that. I
and
saw that.
and one of it was on one of the TV channels. I don't know where it was, and actually the camera was scanning,
Yeah.
and then I could just see only my hand. You know.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, there was a reporter from New York that was capturing that, and everybody, you know, I think all of the United States were kind of looking at this, you know, curiosity, interest, exactly how it worked. And so again, we were the first, and it was a perfect time. It was a perfect time for us too, and yourself as an engineer, your interest, you know, and what you wanted to know how it worked, how fast does it go, right? So all of that was just great to see your commitment to understanding exactly what it meant and what this could possibly hold for the future.
So you're right. And since then, you know, Angie, what we ended up doing was we have crafted out a whole strategy here, right here in Silicon Valley, because we have a huge problem with housing and transportation. You know, and just like LA traffic, the traffic here is getting worse pretty much daily. You know, every day it gets worse. So in fact, this afternoon, I was going to the Valley Medical Center, which is, you know, we are dropping masks to them. So I was just getting out of the house, and I asked my wife, "Do you think I'll hit the rush hour traffic?" And she was like smiling at me, like, "Okay." But you know, I think when I'm you know, coming back from work or something at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a regular day, not in the shelter in place, you know, I'm stuck in traffic.
Yeah.
And our commute times have gone up like 3x, 4x over the last many years.
Sure.
So that's a big challenge that we have, you know. So what we ended up doing was, given that experience of Elon Musk's tunnel, so the top speed on that, Angie, is 760 miles per hour, which actually you told me at that tunnel opening. You had all the facts, you had all the figures, and you told me, Rishi, this thing, once we have the Hyperloop, it travels at 760 miles per hour. And we saw the boring machine that was displayed there. It looked like
Huge.
It was huge. It was huge. And then we also saw all the Twitter postings of Elon when he was talking about, oh, I hate it. I'm stuck in traffic. I'm going to have to create a company. We'll go down. We'll go into the tunnel. I'll call it the boring company. You know, all those tweets were posted as well. And so when you look at 760 miles per hour, so we are looking at a mega Silicon Valley region, which is 21 counties that are far-flung from right here, Silicon Valley. And, you know, we are sort of like on the coast, and then these inland counties, you know, they are looking for a vibrant economy. So what we talk about is, if we are able to build out a transportation grid that connects all these different cities. So you're talking about Yuba City, which is at the far-flung northwest corner of these 21 counties. And then if you go the southwest corner is actually like Monterey Bay. And if we connected all of these cities and counties together, then you could go from any county to any county in 21 minutes, flat, 21 minutes at 760 miles per hour. Even if you don't take 760, if you take 600 miles per hour as the average, you can do, you know, so what do you think of this vision, Angie? I want to get perspective from you. You know, is this something that you might envision supporting if you obviously you don't have the details on this, but you know, this is going to solve a variety of problems. One is, we are building out a high-speed transportation grid to solve the transportation logjam we experience pretty much every day. Secondly, we are talking about expanding out housing, much more affordable housing, many more, because what I tell people is, you know, we have a housing problem. I will guarantee you that we'll build 10x more housing all across the different counties of Silicon Valley, the mega Silicon Valley. And now you will have many more affordable housing. So let's look at Stockton, a city, which is about 2 hours away, about 120 miles away. And in traffic, it takes us about 4 hours. But if you build out a high-speed transportation grid, you are now connected 15 minutes from Stockton to San Jose, 15 minutes. And then young engineers would go live there. They would come to Silicon Valley and they would work. They would live there. They would buy a single family home for a $250,000. That's all it takes in Stockton, $250,000. Now they have found a home. But when they think of launching a startup, they would actually not do it in San Jose. They would not do it in Sunnyvale. They would not do it in Palo Alto. Yes, you're right.
Sure.
They would do it in Stockton. And that's how we can create a booming economy in every part of Silicon Valley. And that's how we can expand the economy, expand the housing, and fix the transportation gridlock. What do you think of this idea, Angie?
Well, let me tell you, first of all, Rishi, when I, was introduced to Elon Musk and they were, came to City Hall and spoke to us individually about their vision, more importantly, the planning process and, pulling permits and things like this for them to be able to erect such a huge project in the city of Hawthorne. I was skeptical. And the reason I was skeptical is because I'm only one person that ultimately has to make a 5-member decision. And what I mean by that is you have to get community input.
Correct.
It's very important that the community understand exactly what this meant.
Yep.
And for them to be able to do that, it required SpaceX, or I should say, the Boring Company, because there's 2 entities that are in Hawthorne, which is the Boring Company that built the actual tonnage for this boring underground transportation system, and then you have SpaceX, which built all the astronaut contractions that keep you an astronaut shoots you up to space, right? These rockets, right? So
yes.
2 different things that we're discussing. And so we had to differentiate that between our constituents, so that they can understand it's not all one. So there's 2 portions of pulling permits for what purpose. So the buy-in from the community was very important for me because I'm very community driven, as you are. So it required them to go out into the community within I believe a 2-mile radius of where they're planning to build this, go door to door and knock on these doors and get constituent understanding, but more importantly, questions that they might have to be answered at that time. But, it could be a good system for me. It could be a good system for maybe a couple of other people on the council, but you definitely need the people's participation. And I'm glad that they went out there, they did their outreach. And when they came back and provided that information to us, guess what? I made them go back out a second time. They weren't too happy about that. Made them go out a second time and make the radius even further so that we had more buy-in, more understanding. And then on top of that, I wanted them to report regularly on the process and where they're at. And so all of that helped ultimately to bring the tunneling system to Hawthorne. And then obviously they took that same project to the city of Los Angeles for their consideration. They then took it to the city of Chicago for their consideration. And so it could probably work anywhere, but at the end of the day, like you said, there has to be enough property, enough space to assure that it's going to be a fit for that community in which they're looking to build.
Correct. Yes. And I really like the process that you adopted, because I think engaging the community, getting their buy-in, is that really what you were doing, Angie, when you said, let's expand the outreach and see how we can bring a lot more people? Because unless you can arrive at a common consensus, there has to be transparency. Tell us a little bit more about that, Angie.
Well, let me tell you, I got a little, excited at the time. And what I mean about excited is, I could be a little stubborn at times, and I could be a little, pushy when it comes to assuring that the community that I represent, we're not districts, we're at large, and we represent roughly 85,000 people in a 6.5 radius city. And we have to be able to assure, because of people that come through the 120th Prairie and Crenshaw corridors where it's ultimately built, the tunneling is ultimately built. The council, some of the council didn't like what I had to say. Some of the council thought I was not wanting to, bring this tunneling system, but how interesting it is. It just made it that much more stronger. And what I mean by that is the development, its thoroughness to assure that we're doing everything by the books, that every permit was pulled, that everything that had to do with development of that tunnel was correct and to thoroughness as could be. And so ultimately, yes, I did vote on that, and I believe we had a 5-0 vote. All of us voted for it.
Very nice.
There was probably one council member that was against it because he didn't feel comfortable with the actual there's a testing that's required, a CEQA requirement, and for whatever reason, I can't remember at the time, the CEQA requirement did not qualify for this project, so it was not needed.
Yes.
However, one of the council members felt very strongly that it was needed. You have to understand that it's being built underneath a street. It's being built near personal property. And so you have this, skepticism on whether or not it will work. And the other concern is because of California having so many fault lines, earthquake-related questions and concerns, all of this came into play. And all of this has to be, something that we take into play.
Correct.
It's interesting. It's interesting where we are today with respect to COVID-19 and how we're so prepared for emergency preparedness. We're so prepared for emergency management, crisis response, but were we ever aware or made aware or prepared for a pandemic? Think about that.
Yep, exactly. Yep, we weren't. And that's a big problem.
Yeah. So we just wanted to make sure that we were on point when it came to the vote of the council, and ultimately Elon Musk, a first for him, a first underground tunneling that he was able to not only build, but get past and pass through a community such as Hawthorne that sometimes isn't so easy to pass items here in Hawthorne, including housing.
Right. Kudos to you for making this happen. Getting all the outreach notifications, engaging the community, having a dialogue, and being a forceful leader to basically pull this together and make it happen. And obviously, when I was there, you are getting a lot of accolades because you were front, smack, and center in making sure you were supportive of this project, and eventually you got everybody else to support this project as well. So that's a testament to your strong leadership. So Angie, where is this going now? I mean, we have 1.2 miles tunnel already built. Has it been used today, or what is the status? And what about expansion of this particular tunnel? Because we were talking about expanding it all the way to the Dodger Stadium, and then it led to some hiccups. So can you elaborate a little bit as to what the status is?
Interesting enough, my part-time job was elected here in the city of Hawthorne. However, you can't live on, a part-time elected position. So my full-time job is with the city of Los Angeles. I've been with the city of Los Angeles now. I first joined the city of Los Angeles in 2001. And I worked for Council District 9 in that time for 7 years. And here I am today working for Councilmember Price, Council District 9 in South Los Angeles. I've been with him for 14 years.
Oh, wow, long time.
So, interesting enough, when he finished his state Senate seat in Sacramento, he became a council member here in the city of Los Angeles, a district which I already had worked for previously. So there's 15 council people on the city of Los Angeles. 15 council people representing 200,000 people plus for each district. There's roughly 10 to 11 million people in the city of Los Angeles alone, the population. I give this just to give you an idea of the work and the scope that you're talking about. Although Dodger Stadium is not in our district, that's, I believe, a little bit of Council District 14, which is Councilmember Huizar. But you have to, the same way that you brought it to 5 council members in the city of Hawthorne, you have to bring it to 15 council members in the city of Los Angeles, and you have to bring it 15 times plus to the community, which is 10 to 11 million people.
Correct.
We're just 85,000 in a 0.5, 0.6.5 radius city. So as you can imagine, what they were up with in the city of Los Angeles. Now, had said that, there were a lot of outreach concerns that they weren't making enough outreach. There was not enough participation for community buy-in. There was a lot of different things, like I said, where it passed freely here in our city of Hawthorne. Now you're talking the city of Los Angeles. And so there's some challenges that they're going to be up against, but there's nothing for them, I believe, to really be of great concern. They were just recently made and approved in the city of San Pedro for a rocket launch. So they're going to be, they're going to launch rockets out of San Pedro, out of Council District 15, Joe Busquiano's district, which is the city of Los Angeles.
Wow.
And everybody knows, like I said, there's 2 entities to the Boring Company. It's SpaceX that builds, these rockets. And then there's the Boring Company that is boring and doing underground transportation. Yep. So again, it's something that folks just need to understand. And I can't stress enough how important it is moving forward should they be successful in getting this undergrounding tunneling in the city of Los Angeles through Dodger Stadium. It's going to take a lot of effort and convincing 15 council people and over 10 million people.
Yep, it's not a very easy project.
It's not.
It's a huge change, and that's the reason why it will be a long process. But somebody needs to take ownership and put their weight behind it. And when we look at things like the Santa Clara 49ers Stadium, the Levi Stadium that came up here, it was a couple of council members, or perhaps only one, who essentially took charge, and they were willing to put everything on the line with that project and convince everyone else to fall in line. And that's what it takes. It takes leadership like Angie to make things happen. So on this, when you look at Elon Musk, he used, it was a launching pad for Elon to have this project on the ground in Hawthorne. But then, the latest, right? He's building a tunnel below the Las Vegas Convention Center.
I saw that.
It's a $140 million project, if I remember the numbers. It's about maybe 2 miles long, and essentially it's for the shuttle. They'll pick up people and then go down in the tunnel and take them all the way, maybe like 2 or 3 stops along the way.
Yeah.
And which is good, because I think we need that in Las Vegas. We need it below the strip also. So, and we also hear that they are building out a tunnel between New York and DC, but I haven't seen any update on that. And then apparently in Chicago also they are considering that. But here is the thing, what Elon did. He took the whole Hyperloop concept, and it's like open source. Anybody can use it. So there are companies in the world that are designing Hyperloop systems. So now there are different parts of the world, like in India, between Bombay and Pune, which is just about 2 cities, about 100 miles. And that whole project is a Hyperloop project. I forget the name of the company now, but essentially the total price for the project was about $8.7 billion. $8.7 billion for about 100 miles. When you look at 100 miles for a bullet train, the plan was about $70 billion. So this project is a lot less. And hopefully, at some point we'll see it working somewhere, but that's TBD. I mean, there are pilot projects that have been conducted. So where do you see this going? Is this something that you think that when you see the future, Angie, based upon your leadership and everything that you have done as a council member, as a mayor, do you sort of conceive this type of project from going ahead at some point?
I'm hopeful. I think for the most part, and the reason I say I'm hopeful for the most part is simply because of the COVID-19 and what this has done to not just the economy, but to the American people. You really have to understand now where the priorities are for families and for individuals, those especially that have been the hardest hit. You know, we talked about the bullet train years ago, probably not that far back, when Governor Brown was in office, and how much that was going to cost. And there were some people for it, and there were some people against it. Uh, I know that Governor Gavin Newsom had some reluctancy behind it. And, you know, where we are today, let me tell you, that budget for Sacramento has changed drastically since January. The draft of that budget that they probably had is no longer going to happen. And I'm kind of thankful now in hindsight that that bullet train didn't happen, for the simple reason of the billions of dollars that that transportation system was going to eat up and where we are today. So, you know, I'm hopeful that those that are able to take care of themselves, which are those large corporations, those large entities that have reserved monies and monies that ultimately won't stop their projects, I think they need to be now a little bit aware that some of those ideas might not come as fast as they were at one time, you know. And I think for the most part, they get it. They get it because they have employees that are suffering today due to COVID-19 and how it's hit them, right? So, I mean, we live in a great America. We live in a great America. You know, we're very strong when it comes to getting back on our feet and our economy, you know, getting a jump start here sooner or later. But as it is today, I can't say today that we have the ability to build underground transportation systems, and this is something that's going to be great for everybody. I'm happy today knowing that LAX is going to have a people mover, a
Right.
people mover at LAX that's been a long time coming, and the expansion of LAX. But if Elon Musk is able and still willing to make a tunnel, and I believe they started and finished in Las Vegas with some of that portioning of the tunneling. I don't see why not, you know, but I'm a little skeptic right now because of the whole COVID-19 situation.
No,
I'm a little
you're right. You're
I'm
right, Angie.
sensitive to that. Yeah.
I got a little carried away, you know, because I think we didn't quite, you know, put this whole thing in the context of coronavirus and the whole economic debacle that is playing out right now.
Yeah.
But let's talk a little bit about that. You know, obviously, I think to fund an infrastructure project like this would be next to impossible right now. You know, in this economy, unless we recover miraculously. But what we
Yeah.
are hearing is, you know, I think the last count I saw was like 15 million unemployment, 15 million people have filed unemployment in this country,
Oh,
and about 30 million will be out of insurance. You know, so this is, you know, it's going a little, and we are in the very early stages in terms of, you know, how this will all play out. In fact, you know, a lot more issues will emerge, you know, after we emerge from lockdown. And
yeah.
so now let's put into the context with what's going on, right? Like, you look at the movie theaters, you know, they do across America, they do about 220 billion dollars of business in
Oh,
1 year.
yeah. Uh-huh.
220 billion dollars. And last week, Angie, the total business was $5,000, from 220 billion down to $5,000.
Oh,
Oil
well,
and gas, that is impacted drastically. You know, travel is impacted drastically. Tourism is impacted drastically. I
oh,
mean, every
absolutely.
sector is suffering right now. So this is a new world of coronavirus. But what we are observing right now, Angie, is that
Mhm.
many people, they are stepping up and seeing what they can do to help out. And like we have this team of folks, volunteers who are building masks, and we are going out and dropping it to the hospitals around us. And so
Yeah.
far, this community has rallied. They have come around, and they have right from our team here. We have contributed about 2,500 masks in the last, I would say, 2 weeks. which
Oh,
is pretty
wow.
phenomenal how people are just jumping in and wanting to help. We are helping seniors drop groceries or sorry, pick up groceries and drop it off at their homes, or pick up the
Mhm.
medication from the pharmacy and drop it off to their homes. And
Yes.
it's very interesting when we have an ask, there are like 4 or 5 people who step up and say, I'm willing to do it. Nobody says no. What are the
Yeah.
stories you are hearing from Los Angeles, from Southern California, Angie?
Yeah. Well, again, I work for the city of Los Angeles. I've been in public office some 25 years, and I've been with, the city for a while now. And there's a lot of scared people. There's a lot of scared people. The calls that we get to our office are for food, are for assistance with food. Um, it's for diapers. It's for meal drop off, pickup. And what I mean by that is, families wanting to pick up meals and take them to their loved ones, seniors that are shut in that they can't get out. And then you have the students, the kids that, um, are basically at home. And unfortunately, we have probably the highest poverty rate in the city of Los Angeles when it comes to Council District 9 in South Los Angeles. There's a lot of folks that didn't finish high school. There's a lot of folks that don't speak English. There's parents that don't speak, English, and they don't know how to read and write. So when you talk about students that are now having to be taught at home, how do you do that? How do you do that? And so there's great concern. There's great concern not only as a mother, as a grandmother, but you sense the urgency in folks when they're calling the council office asking for assistance. Today I had somebody who is short 1 month's rent, and prior to COVID-19, now he's saying that he doesn't want to lose his home, and if there's any financial assistance. And so the city the city ultimately is providing as much as it can. The mayor today introduced he had implemented a COVID-19 like nonprofit organization where people could give monies to assist families. And today he actually introduced that on a press conference, and there's going to be a process for families to call a phone number, and if they qualify, whether or not they're documented or not, would be able to qualify for a gift card that they could use to go get food and get what they need. And so with regards to how people are stepping up and assisting others, it's pretty much everywhere. It's from those restaurants that are no longer able to survive in a sense because of the closures. They're stepping up and using all of their inventory, whether it be toilet paper, paper towels, whether it be food, and they're taking that and they're making it available to first responders. They're making it available to individuals and families that are in need. The food banks have been stepping up. They have always been there, but more than ever today. There's great efforts in helping those that are in need right now. But at the same time, the question remains, what's going to happen after this is finished with? And I think that's going to be a reality for all of us to see. And to be honest, I had a press conference, not a press conference, but a staff meeting today that sounded a little scary, even for myself as an employee. So it's a reality, and no one is mute to it. No one is given a silver spoon here today. All of us are feeling it. All of us.
Yeah.
And it's just good to know that there's people that are humble, and people that are willing to sacrifice something that they have that might be little to give to those that have a greater need than them. Yeah.
Yep. So we have launched an initiative here, which is Silicon Valley Strong, and a lot of the high-tech companies that are cash rich, they have cash reserves, so they
Yeah.
are contributing like millions of dollars to
Wow.
Silicon Valley Strong. And this foundation is going out and trying to help people because there are lots of needy people, and there are people from top to bottom. You know, small businesses that would typically thrive are having to shut down. Yesterday, I saw an email, or actually a Nextdoor posting, that said that the gas station close to our home is shutting down because the owner just can't keep up with the bills, you know, and how the economy has taken a toll upon his business. And then I see news about people being laid off. It's just terrible. And so I liked your story in terms of what the county is doing, because I think, you know, we have to create a social net for people, and that includes everyone from top to bottom. You know, our feds are basically rolling out a stimulus package. We ran lots of small business webinars to provide this information. You know, how do you get the economic impact and disaster loan, economic injury disaster loan? How do you get the payroll protection program loans, or portion of which can be waived off? So we are providing this information as proactively as we can, because it's a new world. It's a new world, and we all have to engage and help out a little bit, you know. So, but Angie, talk a little bit about, you had a meeting today, and it was a pretty scary story that was unfolding, and we sort of can see that an economic debacle that will play out over the next year, 2 years. I don't know how long this will last, but what do we need to do to, you know, as elected leaders, you know, what can we do to help our community out? You know, I mean, you have been a forceful leader there. You know, what would you be doing, like specifically in the context of the county, or even beyond that? You know.
You know, I'm going to speak for myself. For instance, if I was to continue being a council member here in the city of Hawthorne, I would step it up. I would call my resources, I would call my contacts, and find a way to continue to be of service to the people. And how do you do that? You call people at home, you check on them, you see how they're doing. You ask what's the most pressing issue they have today, whether or not they have sufficient food, whether they not they have sufficient supplies. And then you work with those entities, those contacts, and you make great efforts to provide. And I think we owe it to ourselves, not only as leaders, but as being sincere leaders. If you're a true and sincere leader, you have your community at heart.
Yep.
It's not a title that you're looking for. It's the sincerity that you have, that you truly do love the community you serve and you live. I've worked, like I said, 25 years. I've lived in the city of Hawthorne 35 years. I raised my daughters. I'm raising my granddaughters. And mind you, that's 3 daughters and almost 6 grandchildren. So it takes a village, but you start that village in your leadership. You have volunteers, you have people that have been by your side, that have been helping you. And I have to give you kudos, Rishi, for what you are doing today, just in your community and your leadership and your sincereness, by just stepping it up, giving what people are going to need ultimately, which is resources. They need resources. They might need masks. They might need a little food here. They might need, again, resources. And could you imagine those people that don't have a shelter or somewhere to go, a home? Could you imagine that? And that's something that's going on today in Los Angeles. In our district, we were able to open up 2 shelters with capacity of 40 to 50, and they're full. They're full. We're looking to open another, I believe 2, but there's great need. There's great need, and a lot of uncertainty right now. And for those individuals that don't speak the language, for those individuals that are just really struggling, once had a business, today they don't have anything. Those mom and pop shops that have been in operation for years, those folks not knowing how to fill out SBA small business loan application, and they're probably not going to, because they don't have the resources, they don't have the knowledge, let alone the language to do it. And so you're gonna come across these stories after everything is said and done, but the urgency today is to be proactive. Let's be proactive in what we're trying to do here. We're not trying to scare folks. We're just trying to assure folks that, in our knowledge, in how we've been able to step up in our service, a time of service, a time of need, we're able to find those resources. I've always said, where there's a will, there's a way. And I do believe that.
Yep. So you make some really good points. I think we have to be cognizant of the needs. And as long as we make ourselves accessible and we demonstrate to people that we are willing to help, people will reach out. And when they reach out, all sorts of problems emerge for us. And this is really what is also going on out here. What we have done over the last few years is trying to be accessible to people. And people are talking about, hey, I'm been evicted, or I can't pay rent, or how can you get the property tax deadline to be postponed? People are coming out with all sorts of challenges. And all we can do is, how can we help? Sometimes it's about pointing them. Like people are asking me, Governor Newsom has announced this voucher program for motels. I would like to see how I can check in because I don't have a home. Can you help me out with that? And it basically, that's the least we can do is to provide them the guidance of what it takes to get that level of service or any type of offering that exists from the county or anywhere else, and see if they can find a place to land, because these are going to be very uncertain times. So Angie, that brings me to the next question, which is about the social net. And in Silicon Valley, there's always, the gap between the haves and the have-nots has kept growing over time. And when we look at the struggle going on, it's becoming more and more difficult to have people make their ends meet here, because this place has become exorbitantly expensive. And we'll see a little correction now. But, we, to some extent, what I hear about is, everybody who shows up here, they succeed on their merits. They sort of like fight it out. They are very smart. They have the energy. They have the motivation, and they sort of make it happen. And they don't quite see how we could engage with the folks who are struggling and how we can help them out. And so there'll be a lot more of a social net that will be needed right now in the next few years. And to some extent, what people say is, oh, that is socialism, that is communism. And but if the federal government does not engage right now, I think we'll have a huge problem in every strata of society. So any comments on that in terms of what is the role of the public sector to make sure that we steer everything on the proper path?
Well, wow. Well, first of all, let me address the state of California and its growth, and it's not cheap.
Yes.
Born and raised in Idaho, 11 siblings, mom and dad, married very young. We were migrant farm workers. We migrated to Idaho from other states looking for work, and that's how we settled in Idaho. And that's where all my siblings live today. I have 10 siblings that live in Idaho. My parents have passed on. I live in California. I've been here 35 years. And I basically had to learn for myself, raising my two daughters at the time. They were born in Idaho, how to make it in California. And it wasn't easy. And this is back in 1988. This is before some infrastructure that wasn't even built yet. Today, I look at the Harbor One freeway and I look back and I say, wow, I arrived here when that freeway was being built. Today, there's cars flying 100 miles an hour because of COVID-19. They think that, they could be speeding 100 miles an hour down these roads. But California is very expensive. It's very expensive for families. It's very expensive for folks, like I said, that don't have an education, don't know the language. I can't stress that enough. What do we have to do to just assure that everyone is getting their fair share? Because that's what it's about. It's about fair share. And I also talk about, for instance, downtown Los Angeles. It's going to take care of its own. It's going to take care of its own, but who's going to take care of those that don't live in those areas that are taking care of their own? Those areas that some folks don't even want to go down that area because, it's got, blight or some other, things happening that they just don't wish to be in those areas.
That's right.
I say at the end of the day, if you're in leadership, if you're a council member, if you're a supervisor, if you're a congressional person, if you're, an assembly member, you always have boots on the ground. And what I mean by that is you find deputies that can represent you and go out to the community and serve their community under your leadership. And I say that to say, the same way that you go knocking on doors, you're going to set up a table at the entrance of a grocery store and you're going to greet people and you're going to ask them what's their pressing concerns, what is their needs. You have to be in the community asking, because unless you ask, you're not going to know. And unless you know, you're not going to do anything about it. And
Yes.
so it's very important. It's very important. And you have to understand that there's families involved. There's families involved. And if one family is affected, all of them are affected, because ultimately you have large communities with large members of families today that can't afford rent. So they're having to double up in a home, double up, triple up in apartments. And, you know, California has never been, in my opinion, affordable. It's never been affordable. Uh,
Yes. Sure.
but you know, but people have struggled because they want to continue living here. They enjoy the California weather. They enjoy the opportunities that their children have to be able to go from, you know, 20-minute drive. 1 minute you're at Disneyland, you know, 20-minute drive you're at Knott's Berry. You know, anywhere you go in Los Angeles in 20 minutes, you could be anywhere, and you could travel anywhere and enjoy yourself. But I've had lots of people, when I work cases in Los Angeles, I handle a lot of casework. I often tell people, you know, who are being evicted, who are can't afford their rent or can't have, you know, the needs that maybe they had back in the 80s. I oftentimes say, why don't you leave California? Why don't you move out of California? And the stories that I hear all the time, it's because, you know, this is my town. This is all I know. This is where I've been for
Right.
30 years, you know. And
Yep.
so I understand that, but like I said, there has to be uh, other ideas that we could implement as leaders in the community to reach those individuals, not just in a time of need today, but when we're flourishing, and they could flourish. And we
Yeah.
could teach them how to do that by connecting them to resources, connecting them with other organizations, nonprofits, and faith-based communities and educational communities where they could have an opportunity to learn. And I think we just have to keep pushing that. We have to keep pushing that. We need to keep teaching. We need to keep leading. But at the same time, we can't, you know, sit stagnantly and say, but why, but why, but why? We already know that. We already know that.
Yeah.
Unless you really want to help, you know, that's what I say, you know, put your boots on the ground and find out where that need is most. And you could do that as a community. You could do that as a sitting council member. Again, you know, any elected office, you could do that. It doesn't necessarily need to be you, but it's just good to know that you're aware of what people are saying out there, and what policy or legislation can be implemented. That's going to be another thing, Rishi. That's going to be another thing. After COVID-19, you're going to see a lot of policy being coming out of this. Lots of policy. Whether it's going to be good or bad policy, it's going to all involve money. I'll tell you that much. It's going to involve money. And unless you've got some folks that are rich folks that are willing to, you know, part of some of their property to build something on it to help those less fortunate, it's going to be interesting to watch. It's going to be interesting to watch just what, you know, what happens after this.
You make some really excellent points, Angie. You know, I think it's going to be a new world, and
Yeah.
we all have to figure out how we are going to deal with this new world. And as elected leaders, we have to sort of figure out, you know, how we can be of help. And how do we help? Is just by staying close to the people, allowing them the opportunity to reach out and provide perspective as to what help they need, and rolling out policy programs based on that. So unfortunately, these are going to be tough times over the next couple of years. And Angie, I look forward to your guidance in terms of our discussion and what we can do, collaborate, you know, take some ideas from Silicon Valley, supplant it in Los Angeles, and take some from there and make it work over here. You know, so I look forward to continuing our conversation over online, over the phone, but also we'll bring you back in a few months. And once again, as a special guest, Angie, it was a delight to have you. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. And I really enjoyed the conversation, Angie. Any final words before we?
I just want to say again, I just want to say kudos to you. Thank you for the podcast. Thank you for reaching out to the people listening to your podcast. It's always good to see leadership at its finest. And I just have to commend you again for just not your efforts to run, but more importantly, to serve, to really serve the people. And I couldn't be happier to know that I have a friend in you, and vice versa. And anything I could do to help move your cause further, please, by all means, tap on me anytime.
Super. Angie, thank you so much for your kindness as always. Thank you for taking the time, and enjoy the rest of the evening. We'll be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rishi and Angie.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.